Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed. You'll want to hear how this one ends, because in this town, the truth was buried deeper than anyone dared to dig. It was just after 2 a.m. when the first call came through to the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. A frantic voice, shaking, barely coherent. "There's someone out there, behind my barn. I think it's..." Then silence. The line went dead. When Deputy Claire Henson arrived at the scene, the rain was coming down hard, streaking across her windshield like claws. She could barely make out the shape of the barn through the mist. The property belonged to Eleanor Reeves, a retired schoolteacher loved by everyone in Maple Hollow, a town so small, most folks didn't bother locking their doors. But that night changed everything. Claire found Eleanor's phone on the porch, still glowing from the emergency call. The door was open. Inside, the living room light flickered. A cup of tea sat half-finished on the table, steam long gone cold. And on the floor near the kitchen, a single muddy footprint. The storm worsened as backup arrived. Detective Mark Caldwell took one look around and knew this wasn't a break-in gone wrong. There were no signs of forced entry. Whoever had been there was someone Eleanor trusted. They searched the property until dawn. No trace of Eleanor. Just that single footprint, men's size 11, the sole worn smooth. By morning, the town was already talking. People whispered at the diner, at the gas station, at the church. Some said Eleanor had been hiding something, a secret from her teaching days. Others claimed they'd seen a dark truck parked near her property in the days before she vanished. Detective Caldwell began piecing together her last 24 hours. She'd received a letter that morning. No return address. The envelope was found open on her desk. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 7 words. "You can't bury what we did." The handwriting was neat, confident, familiar. Caldwell sent it to the lab for analysis, but he couldn't shake the feeling he'd seen that handwriting before. It itched at his memory like a splinter he couldn't remove. Meanwhile, Deputy Claire went door to door, interviewing neighbors. One man, Henry Porter, said he heard a car engine around midnight, a slow rumble, like someone didn't want to be noticed. He couldn't see the driver, but he saw the headlights stop by Eleanor's barn for nearly 5 minutes, then disappear into the woods. Later that afternoon, a search team combed through the trees behind her property. Around 4 p.m., one of the volunteers called out. Something metallic glinted in the mud, a keychain with an old-school emblem. It belonged to Eleanor. But that wasn't the part that stopped everyone cold. Just beside it, half buried in the earth, was a rusted bracelet engraved with the name David Reeves, Eleanor's son, who had died in a supposed car accident 15 years earlier. Detective Caldwell froze. The car crash. The closed case. The sealed records. He looked at the bracelet again, his pulse rising. Eleanor's son was supposed to be dead. And yet, the footprints, the letter, the timing, everything pointed to one chilling question. Was David Reeves still alive? When the team opened the old barn later that evening, they found something none of them were prepared for. A hidden door, locked from the inside. And behind it, someone whispering. If you're still here, you already know this isn't your average story. Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about safe, small towns. The hidden door inside Eleanor Reeves' barn wasn't on any of the property blueprints. It was old, reinforced with steel hinges, and locked tight from the inside. For nearly 2 hours, Detective Mark Caldwell and his team worked to pry it open. When it finally gave way, the air that spilled out was thick, damp, and stale, as though it hadn't been touched in years. The space beneath was small, a cellar carved directly into the ground. A single flickering bulb swung from the ceiling, illuminating a narrow cot, scattered notebooks, and a wall covered with faded photographs. All of them were of Eleanor from different points in her life, teaching, gardening, smiling with her students. Every single one taken from a distance. And, in the corner, an oxygen tank and a plate of food, half-eaten. Someone had been there. Recently. Whoever it was, Caldwell said quietly. They didn't plan on leaving for good. Forensics confirmed fingerprints on the notebooks. They belonged to David Reeves. But that was impossible. David had died in a fiery crash outside Cedar Valley 15 years ago. The car had been found. The DNA matched. The case was closed. Yet the evidence said otherwise. The notes found in the cellar read like fragments of obsession, guilt, and betrayal. Pages filled with messages addressed directly to Eleanor. You promised we'd stay hidden. You said no one would find out. I hear them outside again. You lied to me. Deputy Claire sat beside the desk, flipping through one of the old photos. If David's alive, she murmured, then who is buried in that grave? That question hung heavy in the air. Caldwell drove straight to the records office the next morning. He pulled every file related to the Reeves crash, autopsy reports, witness statements, insurance documents. But one thing stood out. The coroner's report was signed by Dr. Harold Crenshaw, the town's only medical examiner at the time. The same man who had retired suddenly 2 months after the accident and moved 3 states away. Caldwell's gut told him something wasn't right. By noon, he was at Dr. Crenshaw's old property. The new owner, a young woman, let him search the shed where the doctor once kept his personal archives. Inside, under a tarp, Caldwell found a locked metal box labeled Reeves, Private. He opened it slowly. Inside were undeveloped photo negatives, a stack of medical documents, and one chilling photograph. It showed the wreckage of David Reeves' car, except the body inside wasn't burned. It was restrained, hands bound, mouth taped. Someone had staged the entire crash. Back in Maple Hollow, word of the discovery spread faster than wildfire. Locals began turning up old memories, strange sightings, and secrets they'd buried long ago. One woman recalled seeing Eleanor arguing with a man outside the church the week before the crash. Another claimed she'd overheard Eleanor in tears, begging someone on the phone not to come back. That night, Claire and Caldwell returned to the Reeves property to search the house again. The wind howled through the trees as they entered Eleanor's study. Behind her bookshelf, they found a narrow panel, just loose enough to pull open. Inside was a hidden compartment with a small wooden box. Inside the box was a flash drive. When they plugged it into the laptop, the screen flickered. A series of videos appeared, time-stamped over the past decade. In the first clip, Eleanor sat in the same room, her voice trembling. He found me again. I thought it was over. I buried the truth. I buried him. But he came back. Please, if anyone finds this, tell them I didn't mean for it to go this far. Then another clip, shakier, darker. A male voice off camera. You took everything from me, Mom. Everything. The screen cut to static. Claire's voice barely broke above a whisper. She wasn't hiding from him. She was hiding him. Just then, a loud thud echoed from the barn outside. Caldwell grabbed his flashlight. Stay here, he ordered. He ran through the rain-soaked yard toward the barn, heart pounding. The door swung open with a groan. The light bulb still flickered from earlier. But now, there were fresh footprints in the mud, leading straight to the woods. And on the table near the cot lay a note written in the same familiar handwriting. You shouldn't have opened the door. If you've made it this far, you already know Maple Hollow isn't as quiet as it looks. But trust me, what you're about to hear will change everything. Hit that subscribe button before the truth disappears too. The rain hadn't stopped since the night the barn door opened again. By the time Detective Caldwell reached the woods behind the Reeves property, the ground was slick and the air so heavy it felt alive. The flashlight beam wavered over broken branches and deep footprints, fresh, moving fast toward the river. Somewhere ahead, a shadow moved. David, Caldwell shouted into the darkness. It's over. Don't make this harder. No answer. Only the rush of the river and the creak of the trees. Then, faintly, a cough. Human. Weak. Caldwell followed the sound, his pulse hammering. The beam of his flashlight caught a figure hunched near a fallen log. The man's clothes were soaked, his hands trembling, his face half hidden under a hood. David Reeves. Caldwell's voice steadied. You need medical attention. The man looked up slowly. His face was pale, thinner than the photos, but unmistakable. David Reeves alive. She lied, David whispered, his voice hoarse. She lied to all of you." Before Caldwell could respond, David staggered back, clutching his side. "You think I killed her, don't you?" he said. "You think I hurt my own mother?" "Where is she, David?" Caldwell demanded. David shook his head. "I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen. She said the past was better left dead." He handed Caldwell a folded photograph, two young men standing beside a burned-out shed. One of them was David. The other, Detective Mark Caldwell himself. Caldwell froze. The memory slammed into him like a bullet. Years ago, he'd worked undercover in Cedar Valley on a narcotics sting, one that went wrong. A fire, a cover-up, a teenager who took the fall. That teenager was David Reeves. "Why didn't you come forward?" David said, his voice trembling. "You knew I didn't start that fire. You knew what they did to me." Caldwell's throat tightened. "Your mother made a deal," he said quietly. "She took the blame off you and gave them me. They sealed the file, faked your death, and paid her to disappear." David laughed bitterly. "Disappear? She locked me under that barn, detective. Said it was for my own safety." His voice cracked. "For 15 years. Behind them, branches snapped. Deputy Claire emerged, gun raised. Detective stepped back. But David didn't move. He looked exhausted, almost relieved. "You opened the door," he said softly. "You shouldn't have." Caldwell took a step forward. "David, tell me where she is." David's eyes flicked toward the river. "You're too late." They found Eleanor's body half a mile downstream. The current had carried her into the shallows. In her pocket was a note, handwritten, smeared with rain. He was never supposed to see the light again. Not after what he knew. "I did what I had to do." Forensics confirmed no signs of struggle. Eleanor had drowned herself. The investigation closed 2 weeks later. The official report cited family trauma, unresolved guilt, and mental breakdown. But Caldwell couldn't accept it. He spent hours replaying the footage from Eleanor's flash drive, searching for something he missed. Then, in one video's reflection, barely visible in a mirror behind her, stood a second figure. Someone filming. Someone who wasn't David.
He zoomed in.
The figure wore a sheriff's badge. The timestamp matched the night before David escaped. Caldwell froze. The badge number wasn't his. It was Claire's. A knock came at his office door. Claire stepped inside, rain dripping from her coat. "You shouldn't keep watching those," she said. Caldwell didn't turn. "How long have you known?" She smiled faintly. "Long enough to know she wasn't the only one hiding something." Caldwell reached for his gun, but Claire was faster. The shot echoed through the building, sharp and final. By morning, Maple Hollow was quiet again. 2 deaths, 1 missing suspect, and a dozen questions buried under official reports. The sheriff called it closure. The town called it peace. But a week later, a local fisherman found a rusted bracelet tangled in his net, engraved with the name Mark Caldwell. And on the riverbank, carved into a tree trunk, were the same 7 words from Eleanor's letter. "You can't bury what we did." If you think this story was intense, wait until you hear what happened in Coldwater County. Hit subscribe, you're not ready for the next one.